And good morning, everybody. It's a Tuesday edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull. It is October the 25th, 2022. Yeah, I got some jacked up thing going on with my eye. Everybody's obsessed with my eye right now. I got some sort of psoriasis or something. I don't know. Dealing with it. Going to the dermatologist today. Don't know what the hell's happening. Tried a steroid, but it got worse. So anyway, we'll figure it out. But a lot to get to today. The Cavaliers with a great weekend. We'll talk about what's coming up this week. And the Browns with a obviously not so great weekend and really a not so great month. And we'll talk about what's on the line for them in 6 days at home against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. Plus, I'll talk about why I hate when the Bengals and Browns play each other. And there's just a lot to get to on a Tuesday Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
This podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
everybody does fandom their way.
You've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
All right, here we go. Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, because the Browns are just depressing everybody. I was actually going to start this podcast with the Browns until literally, as I said, let's begin with the Cavaliers, because I just was thinking it's been such a depressing tone to a lot of the podcast ever since the Guardians took a 2-1 lead in the AL Division Series against the Yankees. It's been pretty depressing, right? The Guardians lose 2 in a row. The Browns have been a mess. So let's pep it up a little bit here. The Cavaliers have won 2 in a row. They'll be back in action tomorrow. Hopefully, Darius Garland will be back in the lineup soon. But so far, so good. After a tough loss on the road in which they blew it late against the Raptors, the Cavaliers have won consecutive games, beating the Bulls over the weekend, 128-96 on the road. And then the Wizards, Sunday in overtime, 117-107. In this 3-game start to the season, Donovan Mitchell has become just the third player ever in the history of the NBA to average over 30 points a game in his first 3 games with a team, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, he's been asked to do a lot. It is funny to me how I've seen so much reaction to Donovan Mitchell as if people didn't realize how good this guy was. There's a reason so many of us were screaming to go get another great player. You don't win in the NBA with guys. You win in the NBA with stars. And Donovan Mitchell is a star. Donovan Mitchell is a great player. He's the best player on the Cavs. Now, he has a different skill set than some of these other guys, but that's what's exciting, is that he and Darius Garland are both star players. Both have, slight differences to their game. But, man, in terms of just pure scoring, Donovan Mitchell is the best player on this team. In terms of overall player, it's really close between him and Darius Garland, I think. And soon enough, Mobley as well, who just continues to get better and better, do different things on the court, find his way, find his role. Jared Allen had another big game in the home opener, and the crowd loves Jared Allen. How could you not love Jared Allen? I mean, the Cavs are a likable team, period, across the board. But Jared Allen is without knowing him personally, and again, when you judge players being likable, it's unfair because you don't really know these guys personally. I don't know any of them personally. However, if you're complimenting them, then there's no harm in making judgments. If you're being negative about it, which we sometimes do, myself included, it's a little more unfair. But if I'm making positive judgments, then there's really no harm unless we learn anything different. And Jared Allen just is a joy to watch. The way he hustles, the way he works, the way he overachieves, the way he smiles, the way he seems to love playing basketball, love being with his teammates, love being in Cleveland, feeds off the energy of the crowd. He is the ultimate team guy, and the reason that I think this Cavaliers team is going to eventually have a lot of success even if it doesn't, and it's not all going to come this year, right? The Cavs are probably not going to win a championship this year. They're not quite there yet. They haven't won a playoff game yet. They have to learn how to win when it matters before you can win it all. So realistically, the team is probably not going to win a championship. They're talented enough that, who knows? I guess crazier things have happened. But in the NBA, more than any other sport, you usually have to build up to winning a championship, unless you just add LeBron, right? That's that's the one exception. And as great as these young Cavs players are, none of them are LeBron. That's no insult. I think they would all freely admit that none of them are LeBron. But what's so great about this team is the chemistry appears to be fantastic. They have 4 players who are, at worst, borderline all-stars, and obviously some of them are better than that. And they play with a joy and a passion and a selflessness that really permeates the entire team, the entire franchise, and the entire fan base. The Cavaliers are giving us a lot of pleasure. Now, ultimately, the expectations have been raised. When last season started, most of us did not think they'd go to the playoffs. You hoped maybe they can get a play-in, and you hope for the best there. And ultimately, they did get to the play-in. They were in the top 8, and they didn't come through there. Not a surprise with how they played in the second half. They weren't as good, and they were injured. And they were learning. They were young. And now they're a little more veteran because Donovan Mitchell's been to the postseason many times. You brought in Robin Lopez, who has playoff experience. And so the Cavs are finding their way. And that's with Darius Garland, who has only played a couple of quarters so far. And eventually you'll have Ricky Rubio back in, maybe January, maybe February, who knows. But at some point he'll be back. And that'll add yet another veteran to the mix. The Cavs obviously have to stay healthy, but there's a lot to like about this team, about the players on this team, about how they have performed so far this season. But ultimately, as we all know when it comes to basketball, the regular season is a tune-up for the playoffs. Only a few teams can win a championship. The game is completely different more than any other sport, regular season and postseason. The regular season is all about ultimately. I don't know how much the wins and losses matter. Yeah, it matters for seeding, but we know that the Cavaliers are almost certainly at worst going to be in the play-in round. Now we don't want them to be. It matters because you want them to be in the top 6 and not have to play in that round and get a real and guarantee themselves a real series. We got a long way to go, but in the meantime, you're developing young players, you're developing chemistry, which you're going to have to do because obviously Donovan Mitchell is your best scorer and your best player or one of your best players has to continue to learn how to play with and around the other players. And when Darius Garland comes back, the learning how to play together, 2 ball handling guards is just started. I mean, it was in the preseason in the first quarter and a half or whatever it was of that first game. And so we've seen a different Donovan Mitchell since then. Right now he's completely taking over, and which obviously makes some sense because he doesn't have that other big-time scorer. Karis LeVert obviously, can score, and so can the big guys, but it's not the same because there's Darius Garland's a star. And those guys aren't at his level, certainly on the offensive side. The only and by the way, in addition to the great start that Donovan Mitchell's gotten off to, and obviously we like what Mobley's doing, we love what Jared Allen's doing. We've talked about that. Kevin Love, who didn't play much in the game against the Wizards, only 14 minutes. He's doing his thing, and he has found this niche as a 6th man that fits him like a glove at this point in his career. Hopefully continue to stay healthy and thrive in this role. I mean, what a turnaround. We were a year ago. We were all, myself certainly leading the way, looking to kick his ass out the door. I wanted nothing to do with him. I thought he was a bad teammate. I was like, get this guy out of here. And a year later, most of us, certainly I, feel completely different about Kevin Love. Now he's gone from, I think he's a bad teammate to I think he's a great leader. He can't stay healthy to he was healthy, fairly healthy last year. to what's his role to, wow, what a role. And you're getting other contributions. Again, it's early, but Robin Lopez has had some great minutes off the bench. Dean Wade, who they signed to the extension in the offseason, has played very well in the minutes he's been out on the court. In fact, he had the best plus-minus in his 21 minutes against the Wizards. In the 21 minutes he was on the court, they outscored the Wizards by 19 points. Nobody else was – the only other player in double digits plus was Karis LeVert at plus 15. So that was pretty impressive. And another guy who's played great so far – and again, he's, and Jason Lloyd, I don't have Jason on maybe this week. We'll talk with him on the podcast. But Jason's not a big jetty guy. I shouldn't say he's not a big jetty guy. He thinks sometimes the Cavs have used him too much in a role that's not for him. But in the role he's in right now, knocking down threes, he's done a great job. But he played a lot. He played 32 minutes for the Cavaliers. So right now, there's almost nothing to be concerned about. It's really just injuries and chemistry. The one thing that's, I don't know if it's a concern or it's just a reality, is Isaac Okoro. The guy's bringing nothing to the table. If you can't do anything on offense, and he showed some improvement last year, and it's only 3 games, so I don't want to get carried away. But one of the guys was saying yesterday on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show that he's afraid to shoot right now, and it does feel that way. He has not made a three-pointer. He's only made 2 baskets. He's played almost 60 minutes in the 3 games so far. He is 2 of 10 from the field and 0 of 5 from 3. I know he's a solid defender, but when he has more turnovers than field goals, more personal fouls than field goals, we got a problem. And Kobe Altman, I've said it a million times. I was killing him when he first took over as the GM. I was wrong. I've apologized on the air 1,000 times. Kobe Altman has done a tremendous, tremendous job as especially the last, 3 years as the GM of the Cavaliers. He's hit almost everything. His only miss was Isaac Okoro. That's how it feels like. It doesn't, and the idea that they're going to keep starting him, I would think when Darius Garland comes back that he's going to go to the bench. Because the picture, if you can't have a 0 on offense. You can't have a 0 on offense. And obviously there's some guys that are developing. Devin Vassell in San Antonio, Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. I know he's drafted by the Kings. Whatever. I could go through all the guys that got drafted later. You can't hit them all. This appears to be the one miss that it's pretty much the only miss he's had in the last few years is Isaac Okoro. I mean, hopefully I'm wrong about that. We shall see. But so far, he's shown very little. Very little. But that's it. That's the only negative thing I got to say about the Cavs right now. I love the players. I love the chemistry. I love watching them play. They're fun. I love the coach. I think he's done a great job. I love the GM. I think he's done a great job. It's a fun time at the arena. I haven't been to a game yet, but just watching it on TV on Sunday, the crowd was into it. Everybody's going nuts. There's a lot. It's a 99 out of 100 right now about how you feel about the Cavaliers. It's great. Okay, well, enough of the positive. Let's get to the negative. But is there any positive hope yet for the Cleveland Browns? We will turn the page to the Browns coming up next. First, let me tell you this. BetOnline.net is your number one source, for all your betting needs. Love BetOnline. Football, basketball. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. First time ever I'm getting up during the podcast. We'll take a quick break. I'll be right back. I'm coming. It's a good thing I actually wore shorts today so I could get up during the podcast. All right, let's get to the Browns. So as we begin on Tuesday morning, as I start this segment, it is 9:16 a.m. on Tuesday. And where we sit right now is the Browns are the 14 seed in the AFC. 14 out of 16 teams, some of that due to tiebreakers. Only the if 14 teams made the playoffs, the Browns would be in. Only the Steelers and Texans behind them. Obviously, it's not looking good right now. But the season is not over. Now, I was emotional certainly on Sunday. I did yesterday's podcast Sunday night, and was very and after watching the game again, talking to some people I respect. There is, I do feel like, okay, well, there is, I've been a huge Kevin Stefanski supporter, and I've been really down on him based on the last 2 weeks. But after getting off the ledge and calming down in the last 24 hours, I'm still on this Kevin Stefanski train. However, he has done a poor job the last few weeks. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He needs to be better. There's no excuse for this team to be 2-5. The reality, though, of the situation is that when Sean Watson got suspended for 11 games, most of us didn't, if we were being realistic, we did not think the Browns were going to make the playoffs. And certainly I don't think they're going to make it now. And certainly they're worse than I thought they'd be. I did not think they'd be 2-5 after 7 games. I was hoping they could be 5-6, maybe even 6-5. 5-6 is still possible. It's not likely. 6-5 also still mathematically possible, but not obviously even more unlikely. If the Browns have any chance of making a run, and remember, as bad as things are, they're only 2 games out of a playoff spot. Okay? And I know there's a million teams. Yes, there are. Yes, there are. There's a lot of teams. And the Browns are probably going to have to go at worst, 7-3 to make the playoffs. They'll probably have to go 8-2. And this team's probably not capable of doing that since they still have 4 more games with Jacoby Brissett. However, if they can beat the Bengals in 6 days here in Cleveland, I'll still give them a shot. Now, if they lose that game, that's the end of it. That is the final nail in the coffin, because if you lose that game, now you've lost to both Cincinnati and Baltimore, and at least the Bengals, I don't know what we don't know what the Ravens are going to do, but if the Browns lose to the Bengals will have 6 wins. They'll have 5 wins. The Browns will have 2. It'll be a 3-game lead in the division. And they will not have the tiebreaker. So, to me, that's the final nail in the coffin. But they still have a chance. By the way, I was mentioning in the beginning of the show, I hate when the Browns and Bengals play. I hated that the Cubs played the Guardians and the Indians at the time in the World Series. It always puts me in an awkward spot. I've been honest about my fandom. From the moment I moved to Cleveland, I promised I was going to do that. I was not going to be a phony. I've worked here 12 years now. 11 years, 12 years. I've worked here 11 years. I've lived here 11 years. This community means something to me. The city means something to me. And all my friends here are Browns and Guardians fans. Now, I never thought I'd root for teams moving to a city because I grew up in New York and didn't root for any New York teams except for St. John's basketball. But it's different for whatever reason. I do want the Browns to do well. I do want the Guardians to do well. I do want the Cavs to do well. Now, I don't have a favorite basketball team, so it's a little easier with the Cavs. If I'm being totally honest, which I try to be all the time, I root for the Guardians the most of the 3 Cleveland teams, and then the Cavs and Browns after that. But I do root, obviously, as anybody knows, I root for the Guardians as long as they're not playing the Cubs, and I root for the Browns as long as they're not playing the Bengals. But the Guardians really got in my blood this year more than any other team in Cleveland. But these are always awkward weeks for me because I'm always afraid. Like, I pride myself on being unbiased and looking at teams I root for and even teams I've rooted for my whole life and trying to be fair about it. And sometimes I think I'm so worried about being fair that I overcompensate and maybe end up being unfair to the teams I root for. So it's always a little awkward. And I don't like to, I like to talk trash, but not this type of trash. I like to talk trash in terms of arguing with somebody about something, but not in terms of like rubbing it in somebody's face when my team's better than theirs. That's, unless it's especially when it's people I care about, like the great fans that support me here in Cleveland. So I don't do any of that stuff, but I have no problem talking trash to Yankee fans. They deserve it. And, anyway, a little sidebar there. I'm going to take one more quick break here. When I come back, I'm going to start looking ahead to the Browns situation, the trade deadline a week from today, and start looking at the matchup against Cincinnati and where the Browns may have an advantage. That's all coming up in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. Okay. So, mentioned this briefly yesterday. The Browns have a week to decide what they're going to do in terms of the trade deadline. We know they've already made a trade with Deion Jones at linebacker to try to improve that area of the team. Now the question is, if they lose, or even if this week, in the last week we've seen Christian McCaffrey get traded for 4 draft picks to San Francisco. And then last night, James Robinson, not nearly as good a back as Christian McCaffrey and not nearly as good a back as Kareem Hunt, was traded for a late-round pick to the Jets. Jets very aggressive. Well, Kareem Hunt is a commodity that the Browns are not using properly, in my opinion, and that other teams could see value in. I think his old team in Kansas City, certainly the Buffalo Bills, certainly the Los Angeles Rams, and there was one other team. I forgot now the other team. I'm going to have to look it up. I texted a buddy of mine that I had I had 4 teams that I thought Kareem Hunt could make sense for. I mentioned 3, and I can't think of the other one. The Cardinals. That's right. The Arizona Cardinals are another team. But especially the the Cardinals, I guess the Rams and Cardinals have the same record, but it feels like the Rams are going for it more than the Cardinals. But the Cardinals probably going for it too because their coach's probably his job is on the line there. So Kareem Hunt could probably, if the Browns traded Kareem Hunt, you're going to get a package that's somewhere in between what the Panthers got for McCaffrey and what the Jaguars got for Robinson. And that's a big gap, right? The Panthers got a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round pick, and the Jaguars got a 6th round pick that could become a 5th. Now, Kareem Hunt is certainly better than Robinson. He is not quite as good as McCaffrey, but he has the same skill set. He hasn't been used a lot. It's fair to question whether he's still the player he was as a rookie in Kansas City, but that player was special. Now, it's a number of years later at this point. He's not old, but he's not young, and you wonder what he would draw in return. Because unlike McCaffrey, Kareem Hunt's a free agent at the end of the year. So the Browns won't be able to get as much. But it wouldn't stun me if the Browns traded him this week. If they lose to Cincinnati next Monday night, I think it's a no-brainer that he's going to be gone. Now, again, if a team doesn't offer anything of value, you're probably not going to give him away, even if he's becoming a free agent, because you could get draft pick compensation there that might be worth more than what you would get back in a trade. But we'll see. But I do think if I'm Buffalo, like Devin Singletary's okay, but Kareem Hunt in Buffalo would be scary good. I mean, he'd be their 1A back. Kareem Hunt with the Rams. Again, their offense not clicking on all cylinders. Even Arizona, right? James Conner is, again, none of those teams have good running backs. They have average guys. Kareem Hunt, in my mind, and again, until he does it again full time, I still think he can be a top 10 back if he's a lead back for a team. We just haven't seen it because he hasn't really had that opportunity here as the number 2 back behind Nick Chubb, a guy who's even better. But Kareem Hunt has a special skill set and is a special talent. Now, the Browns haven't taken advantage of it, and they deserve criticism for that. I think Kevin Stefanski, one of his biggest flaws has been not using Kareem Hunt enough. It's stunning to me, especially in the passing game. However, it is what it is at this point, and you wonder if he's going to be gone because he is not re-signing with the Browns. I don't think he has to be traded or signed to an extension before the season. It didn't happen. They're not going to pay him big money. It doesn't make sense to pay him big money. When you are spending big money on Nick Chubb, even though Kareem Hunt's good, especially if you're not using him that much, what's the point? So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm thinking that they may try to wait to see if they can win that Bengal game and kind of keep their season alive. But if they get a good enough offer, and again, 2 backs have gone off the board in the last 5 days, if they get a good enough offer from somebody, and I don't know, I'm speculating Buffalo, the Rams, maybe even Kansas City again, and Arizona. I'm speculating. I don't know that any of those teams are interested, but if they are, and if an offer's good enough, it wouldn't stun me if the Browns did it at 2-5, but certainly at 2-6. Not much time between the Monday night game and the trade deadline next Tuesday, but there was enough time to get something done, and we'll see what the Browns do. Meanwhile, if they're going to beat the Bengals on Monday, it's really interesting because Kevin Stefanski has had a lot of success against the Bengals. Baker Mayfield's best game, one of his best games ever, he's played very well against them. Now, Baker Mayfield's gone. We don't know what Jacoby Brissett's going to do. But the Browns have played really well against the Bengals. I know there's been some trap between Jamar Chase and Greg Newsome. Newsome has not played well. The Bengals offense is cooking right now. The last 2 weeks, they look like the offense we saw last year. They have not run the ball as well, though. Their passing game has been great, especially lately, but their running game has not been. So the Bengals have been sort of one-dimensional. However, that one dimension is very strong and will be a challenge for the Browns to stop. Interestingly, with the Bengals defense, they have not allowed a second-half touchdown. First team in years to do that. It's really fascinating. Teams have been able to run on them because they've lost their best defensive tackle in DJ Reader, who's expected to be back in a couple of weeks, but he won't be back for this Browns game. The Bengals have struggled against tight ends, although they didn't this past week against Kyle Pitts, and unfortunately for the Browns, they can't take advantage of that because David Njoku is hurt. So is Pharaoh Brown, leaving them only with Harrison Bryant. So some of the things the Browns do well, they can take advantage of with the running game. But the Bengals, even without DJ Reader, have been okay against the run, especially in the second half. And the problem for the Browns is if the defense can't stop Joe Burrow, it's going to be hard to keep up just running the ball. And then we're going to all get angry that he's not running the ball as much as we like. More in-depth on the matchup as we go and obviously into next week. All right, that's going to do it for a Tuesday edition of The Bullpen. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Where else but right here with Adam the Bull. See ya.